Bruxelles,
Madrid.
Welcome back to our podcast. This is the third and final part of our series on societal change in Europe. In our previous episodes, we've talked about Europeans who aren't happy in their own country and who leave their homeland to find a better life elsewhere in Europe. So we're taking a closer look at these people today. Where do they come from? Where are they going? What is their motivation? And what effect does this have on their country of origin? And we start with our youngest travelers, students. For a lot of young people, studying abroad might be the first time they have ever had the chance to leave their home country. The idea of living abroad when you're young is romantic, isn't it? I mean, you imagine a carefree lifestyle filled with parties and music and bars, as depicted in countless films and stories. The Erasmus Plus program can in many ways be seen as a more structured and more accessible version of this experience. Erasmus Plus plays a significant role in facilitating young Europeans get their first experience onto foreign soil. In 2024, it helped almost 1.5 million of them pack their bags and set off for new adventures. Fannis Gramenos, a young Greek expat living in Brussels, is one of them.
I was very lucky that at Pantheon University, they told us all about the Erasmus opportunities. Before that, I hadn't even considered it. My Erasmus exchange was my first long-term trip abroad, and experiences like that can shape you. They can make you want to move abroad or decide it's not for you. I'm very much in favor of these short exchanges. They can only be a good thing.
After taking this first step, Fannis decided to put down longer-term routes abroad by continuing his studies, then doing an internship, and finally looking for work outside Greece. Fannis isn't the only young person who's decided to start their professional life abroad. Actually, many European countries are keen to offer jobs to young professionals and graduates from other member states. This is something that the EU is also keen to encourage. For example, to get these exchanges going, the EU has also launched ALMA, a vocational program aimed at helping young Europeans who are in need, not in education, employment or training, by giving them access to a job or training course lasting up to 6 months in another European country. With the EU's working age population declining, Europe today is pretty close to full employment. So instead of having millions of job seekers, there are now millions of jobs going unfilled. Labour shortages emerge in a growing number of member states. Companies are facing record shortages of labour and skills, which increasingly pose a major challenge for the Union as a whole, as it seeks to remain competitive in tomorrow's world. We'll dive deeper into this topic in a future podcast episode. So with everything changing so quickly, how have the profiles of migrant European citizens in Europe changed over time? Firstly, the EU's internal migration data says that the migrant population still mainly consists of young people and more men than women. Professor Rui Pena Pires, a researcher at Portugal's Immigration Observatory, notes that money remains the main motivator for most Portuguese immigrants and that they come from a range of educational backgrounds.
More than half of young people leaving Portugal, indeed of all emigrants leaving Portugal for other countries, particularly within Europe, do not have a degree. Emigration to France, Switzerland, Germany, Luxembourg and Spain continues to be mainly composed of unqualified young people. However, if we look at countries such as the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Belgium, Sweden, Denmark and Norway, more than 2/3, and in some cases more than 3/4, of young people emigrating to these countries have qualifications.
In 2024, the profiles most in demand across the EU were sales and marketing managers, IT and artificial intelligence professionals to support the digital economy, and engineers. With our aging population, there is also increased demand for healthcare workers. Meanwhile, demand for electricians, plumbers, site managers and the like remains very strong. And since there's a lot of competition for workers in European labour markets, wages tend to go up So the fact that people within the EU can move around a lot could help to keep things in check by making sure there's a healthy balance between the number of workers and the number of jobs. However, in a recent landmark report on the single market, Enrico Letta emphasizes that free movement within the single market remains incomplete, and he calls for measures to facilitate labor mobility throughout Europe and ensure job vacancies are more easily matched with suitable job seekers across the continent. With more jobs on offer than there are people to fill them, young people can afford to be pickier too. They are therefore likely to be drawn towards countries with higher wages on offer. But more and more young people are moving in search of a better lifestyle, not necessarily for financial reasons. This includes the category of workers known as digital nomads, who are taking advantage of the flexibility of digital technology to work remotely in sunny southern Europe while keeping their jobs in the north. However, there are more factors at play than the weather and career prospects, highlights Alessandro Rosina, professor of demography and social statistics at the Catholic University of Milan.
The factors driving an increasing number of young Italians to leave the country are not only related to career opportunities and salary levels, although these are significant. The mobility plans of the younger generations are increasingly linked to choices encompassing general well-being, including livability, the efficiency of public administration, and the quality of welfare services, including those that harmonize work-life balance.
So to sum up, there are quite a few factors that play an important role when it comes to young Europeans' choice to live and work abroad. These include, as I said, a higher wage, an easier work-life balance, a more pleasant climate, but also better healthcare services, new life experiences, and a more diverse cultural environment. But this push to leave will obviously make it tricky for some member states to keep their own young citizens. This problem is especially severe in a country like Italy, which is getting older quickly. The 2025 report by the National Council for Economics and Labour says that there has been a sharp rise in the number of young Italians living in the country in recent years. Between 2011 and 2024, 630,000 people aged between 18 and 34 left the peninsula. Let's return to our Italian demographic expert, Alessandro Rosina.
Low birth rates and youth emigration are contributing to the aging of our country, reducing the size of new generations more significantly than in the rest of Europe, and in a way that is unprecedented. At the same time, the elderly population continues to grow. According to statistics, more than 6 million older workers will retire over the next 10 years, and Italy does not have enough young people to replace them. Companies are already struggling to find young people with the right skills, but there is also a growing shortage of staff in social services. Basically, we are facing a shortage of both engineers and nurses. This not only risks weakening Italy's economic growth and prospects for development and competitiveness, but also throwing the social system into crisis.
So is there any way of convincing these young people to return home or to remain where they grew up in the first place? Try and meet their aspirations, Professor Rosina advises.
Italy's difficulty in retaining its younger generations lies precisely in the lack of environments that meet their increasingly high aspirations. The regions best able to retain and attract young people are those that have developed a dynamic, innovative, and inclusive ecosystem over time, where youthful energy not only finds space, but is actually recognized and valued.
In Portugal, where more than 60% of young people are open to leaving the country, these kinds of hubs are also needed, says Rui Penna Pires.
The problem with Portugal is that it currently lacks sufficient centres of attraction, and that living conditions make starting out in life there virtually impossible.
He adds that some European regions are becoming trapped in a cycle of low or negative growth, weak productivity gains, and low rates of employment. He advises for these regions to get all the support they need to help them break this cycle. You might think that if young people in a country are really keen to leave, it's a sign that the economy is not doing well. But according to Professor Pires, that's not the case.
Taking the United Nations figures, for example, we see that the more developed a country is, the higher its emigration rate. In other words, emigration does not decrease with development. Countries such as France and the United Kingdom have many people leaving for other developed countries and also receive many immigrants.
Young Greek expat Fanis Gramenos says that young people who move to live and work abroad will end up bringing benefits back to their home countries.
In Greece, we often think only in terms of brain drain, that young people are leaving. Yes, we recognize the better opportunities abroad, but we shouldn't underestimate brain gain. When I arrived in Brussels for my internship, many of my colleagues said they only plan to stay for a given period, and that they would then return home for personal or economic reasons. Many don't want to stay abroad long term. So, we need to balance both perspectives. Both phenomena exist, and both should exist. And this exchange of experience ultimately benefits Greece too, strengthening the economy.
Fanis is pretty confident that the experience and expertise he gains during his time in Brussels will be really useful when he returns to Greece. So if you want to improve your country's competitiveness in the long run, it may actually be a good idea to build up new expertise and insights, and a well-stocked address book will definitely help. Alexander Nutsov, a young Bulgarian professional, is now back on Bulgarian soil.
I completed my master's degree in Germany at the University of Tübingen. I went there to study and to develop my skills and abilities. But I always thought that what I gained there, I wanted to bring back to Bulgaria.
It is worth noting that while the traditional migratory trend in Europe has long been south to north and east to west, but today, in light of the economic growth being experienced by countries such as Greece, Poland, the Czech Republic and the Baltic states, the so-called brain drain phenomenon has slowed down. Indeed, Nutsov is far from the only one returning to his country of origin, because salaries in these countries have become increasingly competitive. Instead, we are starting to see a rise in short-term expatriation, where people are heading off precisely with a view to gaining experience and skills, a trend that has been observed by David Lafuente, Deputy Director General at Spain's National Youth Agency in Roubaix, and Director of the Erasmus Agency.
What we're seeing is that many young, and not so young, people are moving to other countries to improve their language skills, enhance their professional training, or advance to a certain level of education. This time abroad doesn't necessarily last more than a year, after which they return to Spain. Looking ahead in today's world, I believe that the most important thing won't be whether you have a first, second, or third-class degree, but what added value you can bring to a company. Having these kinds of experiences is fundamental because this is what young people, and people in general, bring to companies and organizations. Life experiences, the ability to interact with others, the ability to live in completely different environments. That is ultimately what employers value.
Such experiences are also about creating a shared sense of community, which may actually serve to strengthen intra-EU ties, he adds.
I believe that this is an opportunity to learn about different cultures and shared values. What's more, you realize that as a Spaniard, your values, principles, and beliefs are not so different from those held in other European countries.
In uncertain times, it's crucial to foster a European identity. Getting everyone talking across the bloc helps everyone understand each other better and stops people getting too polarized. And as Enrico Letta said, moving around within the EU is a great way to experience different parts of the continent, while also getting better at your job and learning new skills. I'd like to say a big thank you to my colleagues Nikos and Mariana from Greek radio station Sky, Alejandro from Portugal Renascença, Aitana from Es Radio Castilla y León, Julia from Milan's Radio 24, Tanya from Bulgaria's National Radio, and Wojciech from the Europeans. Even though we're all over Europe, we're a strong community of European journalists. Next week, we're kicking off a new short series. With Europe rearming, we're curious about the future of the military, intelligence, and the armed forces. And you'll see, that's almost sci-fi. Make sure to come back.